A black woman goes to the hospital seeking health care. Sounds like the start of a really bad fucking joke.
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. We have a very disturbing story coming out of Atlanta, Georgia that needs to be discussed. Back in February, a 30-year-old woman, an RN by the name of Adriana Smith, went into North Shore Hospital complaining of a severe headache. Without any tests or scans being done, she was examined and sent home with medication. The following day, her boyfriend found her in distress and she was rushed to a different hospital where they discovered clots in her brain. At this point, she was past the point of intervention and would eventually be declared brain dead. However, rather than redirecting care and allowing her to pass away for her family's wishes, the unthinkable happened. Adriana has now been kept on life support for the last 90 days because she was 9 weeks pregnant at the time of her brain injury, and the hospital is worried that allowing her to pass away would violate the state's heartbeat bill, which states, and I quote, "No abortion shall be performed if the unborn child has a detectable human heartbeat except A, in the intervention of a medical emergency, or B, medically futile pregnancy," end quote. Against her family's pleas, Adriana is now 21 weeks pregnant and will remain on life support until at least 32 weeks gestation, where her baby, which is already being said to be developing abnormally, will be delivered by cesarean section. This situation is reprehensible. Not only is her family left to watch on in horror, as for all intents and purposes, her corpse is medically pushed to the limits to gestate a doomed pregnancy, they will also be 100% responsible for the medical bills, as well as the infant's care should it survive. Have y'all heard about this? As you can imagine, this has sparked outrage across the country and several debates online as the reality of the consequences of the Roe v. Wade repeal and Trump's America continues to settle in. I'm going to show you what the online discourse has been like and then give my thoughts on the back end.
So one week you'll see a bunch of headlines about the declining birth rate in the US, and you'll see a lot of articles about how American women no longer want to have children, how American women want to be child-free. What are we going to do? How are we going to replace the population? And you'll see a lot of people in positions of power trying to come up with incentives to make giving birth more attractive to the average American woman. And then the next week you'll see a headline with a horror story like what's happening to Adriana Smith, who was pronounced brain dead at 9 weeks pregnant and is now being kept alive as an incubator for that baby. And because she will have been brain dead for basically the entire duration of her pregnancy, most medical experts have no idea what's going to happen to that baby. On top of all of the trauma that this is causing for her family, the family is also likely going to be saddled with some very, very serious medical bills as a result of all of this. Do people in positions of power understand that a lot of American women are seeing this and going, oh, this is actually not a risk that I can afford to take. I cannot risk having this happen to me, not just because of how horrific this is, but also because I cannot put a baby through that, and I cannot put my family through that. The laws that have been put in place to create the dystopian situation that Adriana Smith and her family are having to go through right now, they're making a lot of women who actually want to be mothers afraid to get pregnant.
A black woman goes to the hospital seeking health care. Sounds like the start of a really bad fucking joke. A nurse by the name of Adriana Smith went to the hospital seeking health care. She had complaints. She did not get the proper treatment. She did not get scans done. She did not get proper blood work done. She was turned away with medication. And later on was pronounced brain dead because she had blood clots in her brain. And because she is pregnant, they are keeping her unalived body warm and her heart beating so that her fetus may be viable up until childbirth. There is no way on God's green earth you guys can convince me you are pro-life, because this is absolutely fucking disgusting. It is no longer about laws and politics. This is a straight violation of human rights, alive or dead. This is disgusting. After not doing everything you guys could do to keep her alive and well while she was still breathing, blood pumping through her fucking veins, you decide after she's gone to keep her dead body alive, to put her family through so much trauma and turmoil. Her son thinks she's fucking asleep so she can have a child because it goes against abortion law to let her go. She is not an oven. She is not an incubator. She was a human fucking being, and y'all are treating her like a piece of property that you are going to discard after she has that child like fucking garbage. And I'm so, I want to cry. This shit hurts my fucking heart because there's no way we have strayed this fucking far. And you guys wrap it up in a pretty fucking bow saying you're pro-life. No, you hate women. You love to police women. Say the quiet parts out loud. This was never about children.
As an anesthesiologist, as someone who works in the ICU, I want to talk about how horrifying the precedent set by what's happening to Adriana Smith is. Because if a 10-week pregnancy was the reason why her family could not take their brain-dead wife, mother, daughter home and bury her and grieve her, what happens, for example, if somebody comes to the emergency department after a horrible trauma, after a motor vehicle accident, and they're similarly like early pregnancy, like 9, 10, 11 weeks, like that's not a viable fetus by any means. Do we have to crash them onto bypass if their heart stops because they're pregnant, regardless of how appropriate putting them on cardiopulmonary bypass is, putting them on ECMO is? Does every pregnant person automatically now have to get the most invasive interventions, regardless of what we predict their quality of life or their outcomes will be, just because they're pregnant? And like at face value, that might seem like a good thing, like we should be trying to save as many lives as possible. This might be a topic for another video, the amount of harm that is done to patients because we do so many unnecessarily invasive and life-prolonging interventions cannot be overstated. And now what? That is the fate of every person who is pregnant? They don't get to die peacefully ever again? And I will say, because I think someone is going to make a comment about this, if a pregnant woman goes into cardiac arrest and she has a viable pregnancy, we do something called a perimortem cesarean section, where we do remove the fetus from the patient that we are trying to resuscitate if resuscitation efforts don't seem like they're going to be successful. There are protocols for that. But that's not the same thing as forcing invasive, painful, unnecessary, futile medical interventions on someone because they are pregnant.
Yeah, make no mistake, they are using the body of this beautiful woman as a testing ground to see whether, even after being declared legally dead, our flesh can still incubate a fetus. Now, because I'm old and trying to keep my blood pressure down, I will refrain from trying to explain to you what will happen if that fetus is brought to term and then born breathing, regardless of its condition. But if you need any more proof that these medieval draconian laws have nothing to do with the sanctity of life and everything to do with control, I would refer you to the rules around organ donation. See, without the explicit consent of the person in question, it is flat out illegal to harvest the organs of an individual, no matter how many lives those organs would save. And it in no way matters whether that person is using those organs or not. That's it. Bottom line, you cannot force any individual in this country to sacrifice any part of themselves, blood, organs, bone marrow, to save somebody else, even after death. So why is it that our government can now violate the sanctity of bodily autonomy for a collection of cells, but not for, let's say, a living, breathing 10-year-old on dialysis just desperate for a kidney? Because this has never been about life. Because if it was really about saving lives, that would apply to everyone, regardless of sex. Men would lose their bodily autonomy, and we simply can't have that now, can we?
I'm an abortion provider, and there's been a lot of media attention, rightfully so, in the past few days about the case of Adriana Smith, who was 9 weeks pregnant when clinically she was declared brain dead. But the hospital that she's at in Georgia is basically requiring her to stay artificially alive against the wishes of her family in order to continue the pregnancy and be an incubator until she's able to get far enough along that they can deliver her and have a live fetus at the end of it, despite the fact that no one wants that except for the state, the entities. And unfortunately, this is not the first time that something like this has happened. In 2014, in Texas, there was a woman named Marlise Munoz, and she similarly was found to be clinically brain dead when she was 14 weeks, and the hospital interpreted the Texas law to say that it was required to continue her pregnancy and keep her artificially alive as an incubator. And they did that despite her advance directive and despite her family's wishes for 2 months before the court said that you couldn't do that, and they were able to withdraw that care. And that's not even the first time that something like this has happened. There's so many cases of this happening in different ways, shapes, and forms, and slightly different scenarios where the pregnant person's life and their death is outweighed by the potential for fetal life, even if that's not what the pregnant person or their loved ones and the family desire in any way, shape, or form. In 1987, there was a case of a woman named Angela Stoner Carter, and she was diagnosed with terminal metastatic cancer when she was 25 weeks pregnant, with weeks to live, very scant time left. And essentially, the hospital was trying to mandate her to get a C-section in order to allow the best chance of fetal survival. She was also counseled that the C-section would likely kill her because of the stress that it would have on her very fragile body. And it went to a judge in DC who said that Angela's fate was already sealed and ordered her to get an immediate C-section, despite the fact that that was against her wishes. The fetus, the neonate, died within 2 hours, and then Angela died within 2 days after that. So, all that just to say that all of these things are interconnected. None of these things are new. All of this is just part of this deeply entrenched idea of fetal personhood that has intertwined itself with the law and the way that people practice medicine. And it has completely stripped power away from the pregnant person. And I don't have anything uplifting to say about that. Really, what I have to say is that pregnancy is scary for a lot of reasons. But, new fear unlocked. You could be kept alive as an incubator against your wishes if you aren't careful.
This story is truly gut-wrenching and terrifying. Emory Hospital is not only using this gray area in the law to cover their asses, but I feel like the Georgia government is using this as a way to also find a way to prove a point in favor of their conservative pro-birth agenda. Adriana is now being treated as an experiment and is completely unethical. These type of decisions should not be in the hands of people with zero medical expertise, and it's the ignorance of the people in this country that allows them to get away with this egregious and misogynistic laws. There is no way they can properly artificially gestate a pregnancy in a dead body. And as a nurse, just thinking about everything necessary to keep a body in homeostasis at baseline gives me a headache. Fetuses require much more than just oxygen and calories. They require certain hormones, vitamins, and minerals that mom's body and brain would produce naturally to develop properly. They also need increased blood flow, not only to support the development of the placenta, but for the development as well. I can't imagine how titrating the drips needed to keep her organs functioning optimally are affecting the fetus. They certainly aren't helping, and I'm almost positive the child will not survive outside of the mom's womb. Women's health is making its way down a very slippery slope with each week that passes in this pregnancy. And if women haven't been paying attention to what's happening in the White House and the Senate, they absolutely need to be, because it's only a matter of time until these issues are in our own backyards. I truly hope Adriana's family pursues this case as far as it can go, because there is no reason their loved one should have fallen victim to a gray area in the law. A mother passing away is not an abortion. It's simply a death. And unfortunately, their fetus is a casualty of their death. And I hope this situation serves as a catalyst into specifying what we classify as death in medicine, because this case should have never gotten this far. And the fact that should this fetus survive outside the womb, it'll be neurologically devastated, and the family will be left holding the bag for their 24/7 care is insane. And all while the government is actively trying to cut Medicare, removing caps on medication expenses, etc. So they'll be forced to care for this child with no help and no resources, all because the government thought they knew best and wanted to experiment. This shit is sick. We are right back to where this country started, experimenting and legally working on black and brown people like test subjects right under everyone's noses, and it's honestly terrifying. If you're in a red state, please ladies, hold off on expanding your family, because they're showing us loud and clear our lives as women no longer matter once you become pregnant. Protect yourselves, okay? Also, if you find yourself with a bun in the oven that you did not intend to bake, there are resources for you, and I'll drop one below in my description. Let me know what y'all think of this story. If you made it this far, drop a blue heart in the comments for Miss Adriana. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and I'll be back with another What Took TikTok real soon. Bye!